Welcome to the Armani Talks YouTube channel. I'm your host, Armani Talks. In this channel, I'm covering communication skills for you to level up your way with words and become much more articulate. In today's episode, we're entering the world of public speaking, and we're going to be talking about what to focus on as you have your speech coming up. Today's talk is from my book, Wordplay, 101 Short Stories, Essays, and Insights to Improve Your Communication Skills. This book is currently available on Amazon and Audible. I'm going to drop the links for the book in the description box and the pinned comment right on below. The short story that I'm going to be selecting is called Words and Money. There was a certain period in my life when I was an upcoming businessman. I was the seller of CDs. See, here's how the business model worked. The CDs in Bangladesh are rather cheap. So I would go overseas for a certain period. I would get a whole bunch of CDs for cheap, and then I would come back to the US. So I had all these different CDs, but to take it even a level further, what I also had was a CD burner. As soon as my close friends found out that I had all these different songs and a CD burner in my computer, they asked if they could choose their favorite songs and if I could make them a CD. I agreed to do so. I would sell them the CD for $7. So eventually, I started to get more and more clients and started to sell it for $7 a pop. Eventually, others started to pick up my business model, and they decided that they were going to run me out of business. So they paired up, they pooled their money and resources together, they bought a bunch of CDs, burned it on a disc, and started to charge $5 per CD. And back then, I was way too shy, so I didn't have the guts, the grit, the persistence to carry on with it. And just like that, my first ever business failed. There was one good thing about this. After school, every single day, I would go and play basketball. Basketball was my reprieve. So I was getting done playing a long game, and I look to the corner, and there was this pavilion, right, where a lot of the kids would hang out. And one of the kids who would routinely hang out under that pavilion and watch the kids play basketball was a drug dealer named Diego. Diego wasn't just a drug dealer. He was also my first ever client. So when I sat down, Diego looks at me and he's like, "What's good, Armani? How's your CD business going?" And I was like, "Unfortunately, Diego, these other creeps, they heard about my business model and now, I'm out of business." And he was like, "Well, sorry to hear that, Armani. Eventually, you're going to get back up and you're going to get at it." And as he was giving me this pep talk, I noticed that there were people coming towards him trying to buy some drugs. And he was constantly giving them more drugs. And he was getting money in exchange. I saw $20 bills, $100 bills, more $100 bills. And eventually, I had to ask him. I was like, "Diego, there's so many different drug dealers in this entire area, but all these customers are coming to you. Why?" Diego takes a pause, thinking about how he should answer the question. And he was like, "It's because, Armani, I don't do it for the money first. The money is simply a byproduct." And I was young at the time, so I didn't understand what he was saying. And he could tell by my facial expressions that I didn't understand. And I still remember this moment. He pulls out a $100 bill and he rips it into pieces right in front of me. I was shocked. I was like, "What's this guy doing? Did he go crazy? When's he gonna leave so I could pick up these little pieces and tape them together or something?" And he looks back at me and he's like, "Armani, you see that right there? All these scraps? People are going to fight for that. All these other drug dealers, they work for the money first. While me, I focus on having the best product first. And that's why all these other drug dealers, they continue to lose to me. It's because I focus on what matters. I keep the important thing the important thing. It's the product. Still, despite his passionate speech, I wasn't understanding too much regarding what he was saying. I thought the only reason you did business was to make money first. Who cares about the product? Diego knew something that I didn't. It would take me a couple of years to understand what Diego was saying, and I was going to understand it in a Toastmasters meeting. This is when I was in a Toastmasters club where the meetings would be hosted at an IHOP. And I kid you not, it was actually hosted in the restaurant IHOP. So it's pretty embarrassing. You're speaking in front of your Toastmasters club, and there's also these random people that are trying to eat watching you speak. I thought it was going to challenge me, so I joined the club. I worked my way up, and eventually I ended up getting a mentee. This mentee was a very short, skinny Indian kid, and you could tell he was nervous. He was not looking forward to giving his first speech ever. And he was like, "Yo, Armani, before I give the speech, I need to run it by you, okay? I need us to make sure that this speech is perfect." And I said, "Sure, let's meet up and I'll go through your speech." The first day that he's over here announcing his speech to me, he's using all these big words, too many words, too much descriptions, and I'm not necessarily understanding what his speech is about. So I was like, "Yo, Prashanth, chill. What is your speech about? You're over here using so many words. You're just giving me a headache. Focus more on the message." And once again, he goes back to doing what he was just doing. He was using these big words again, trying to sound smart. And I'm like, "Prashanth, chill. Once again, what is your talk about? What's the theme of it? What's the purpose?" And he's like, "Well, that's the stuff that I'm going to get to, man, but I got to make sure I'm using these right words first." And I'm like, "Prashanth, don't you understand? People aren't listening to you speak because of the words. Words are simply the byproduct of the message. Focus more on the message." And that's when Diego's lesson was clicking for me. Diego, when he was talking about focusing on the drugs first, what he really meant was focus on the product first. Keep the important thing the important thing. And now this lesson with Prashanth was showing something similar. The speech is the important thing. Focus on that. Not about the words first, not about the perception of the audience, what they're going to think of you first. Focus on the talk. And this was a breathtaking insight, especially in regards to speech anxiety. Because here's how speech anxiety occurs. It occurs when the mind is focused more on what it cannot control, and it undermines what it can control. The fix for speech anxiety is to amplify what we can control and undermine what we can't. This is the formula. And Prashanth eventually was able to understand what a simple idea, but it's a game changer. Because as we were working together, he eventually realized that he didn't even quite understand what his speech was about. So once he built a stronger understanding of the speech, that's when he focused more on that and less on what everyone else was going to think of him. When he stopped focusing so much on what everyone else was going to think of him, that's when the whole tendency to use these fancy words to sound smart started to melt away, and he gave a phenomenal talk. Whether it's speaking up at a work meeting, whether it's giving a toast at your brother's wedding, whether it's speaking at a conference, there's always going to be this duality that's creeping in. And the duality is going to come in what is important and what is being perceived as important, but isn't really that important. And this is when the speaker should take a pause before the speech anxiety goes out of its control and ask, what is the product in this scenario? What is the drugs in this scenario? What is the speech in this scenario? And then they need to distinguish it from what is the money in this scenario? What are the words in this scenario? And what are the stuff that matters secondary in the scenario? By giving the mind this level of clarity, it starts to feel enthusiastic. When Prashanth realized that he only needed to focus on one thing to the best of his abilities and everything else takes care of itself, he had this level of clarity. Likewise with Diego, when he saw that all of his competitors were focusing on the derivatives, he had more enthusiasm because he realized, I just got to focus on one thing and I got to make it to, the best that I possibly can. And all the derivatives that these other guys are focusing on, it's also going to come to me. So the next time that you have a speech coming up, the cheat code is to focus on what is important and undermine what is beyond your control. And from there, speech anxiety turns into speech excitement. If you enjoyed today's talk and you want more talks like this on communication skills so you can perceive the lessons from alternate angles, be sure to check out Wordplay. This book has 101 of these short stories which deal with social skills, emotional intelligence, public speaking, storytelling, and many more other topics. Wordplay is currently available on Amazon and Audible. Plus, all the links will be in the description box and the pinned comment right on below. Thank you very much for joining the Armani Talks YouTube channel, and I'll catch you next time.